you introduce the podcast, just with that first bolded line, and then Heath and I will introduce ourselves.
Okay, just let me know when you're ready.
Yes, sir.
Can I improvise a bit on what you've written? Just a little.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Just takes a minute. As soon as it's up, I'll let you guys
no
know.
Worries. No problem.
All right, Lee, you're good.
Okay. Welcome to the Diving Pod. I'm Lee Michaud, the president of USA Diving. I want to thank Aaron and Heath for having me on this evening. And with that, I will turn it over.
And I'm Heath Calhoun.
All right. And I'm Aaron Rooney. And we all know this podcast is brought to you by Sideline Scout. We'll chat a little bit about Sideline Scout later in the episode, but best in video replay. So make sure you get over there and get hooked up with the best in business with Sideline Scout. Also, our Diving 101 for those that are new to the sport or have, want to know how the numbers and letters work. That's episode number 2 of the Diving Pod.
And our newest sponsor is Crossbar. If you go to divingpod.com, you can go ahead and check out just some of the features they have. It's very easy to use. You can do articles, you can do camp signups, club registration, whatever you see fit. They're super easy to use, super great customer service.
All right. Well, we're going to hop right into it. It's been almost 3 years to the day, September 27th, 2021, since we last spoke with you on the podcast, Lee. Just kind of going to look back, check in, see where the state of USA diving is at, and just kind of get an all-encompassing, what's happened over the last 3 years. So I'm going to jump right into it here. One of the first things you mentioned on the previous episode, that was, again, episode number 21, if people are interested in listening back to that one. One of the most important things, or first things you said, was coaches' education. I have some direct quotes, and it just says, the near-term goal was to invest and develop in our coaches' education and development programs that give coaches resources and things that they need in order to be successful in running teams and coaching kids. Also, that there are two options focused on the near future, and those were early education platform and then an ongoing education platform. So just update us if you can on those items.
Will do. So first of all, amazing how 3 years goes by in the blink of an eye. And here we are back having this conversation, which I am pleased about doing. So there's good and there's bad news about this, if I'm being perfectly frank. The good news is that our online offering is up and running. It runs very well, much better than the old one did. The old one would have been referred to as the Learning Academy. The new one does not have a platform name as of yet. But we have coach education. We also have judges certification and education courses on there right now. Those will be augmented, and there will be more formatting that goes on before we actually go full-blown live with this. There's a number of people who have taken courses, both coaches and judges, to give us some feedback and to use them. So it's working well. It's just not. It has not been developed to the point that we would like it to. And there's a bunch of reasons why. The first one, and probably the most important one, is that on a staff of 9 people, it's hard to have one person who can take that role and that project and spearhead it, while we are in the process of replacing a high performance director, and then hiring a high performance manager, and then updating our high performance plan and getting ready for an Olympic Games that are 2 years, 2.5 years away, I guess it would have been, including picking, a venue and so on. So, without making any excuses for that, I would say that the reason that we had issues during that time is we need to have someone whose job it is to spearhead that project. We've got a ton of data, we've got a ton of information, we've got some excellent courses, and so recently we have begun to collaborate with the PDCA and with the AAU to pool resources in order to create, a really substantive, robust program. So I will tell you that it is not where I wanted it to be when last we spoke, but the commitment is still there, and we are still working on making sure that we do develop the program.
And you mentioned it was up and is it live? Where can we find that?
It is live. Yeah, I can share a link with you. Just to understand that it is still a work in progress in terms of the number of courses that are going to be put on there. The courses that are on there are good. So the judges use it for certification every year, and coaches can take their judge certification course on there as well. There's also coach education. There's some parenting. Well, I shouldn't say parenting. That's not a good way to put that. What I should say is that there is parent classes that are on there for parents of divers. But yes, it is, and I'll share a link with you guys so that we can put it out there.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
It is the way it's set up right now. It's still in beta, so the way it works right now is you have to email in and request access, and then you will get sent a password, a user ID, and a password. I beg your pardon. You'll have to set up an account once you've been given the information. Then you can change your password. And you have access to it all the time. And I don't mind if everybody has access to everything that's on there, just so long as everyone understands this is a work in progress. It is not a finished product today.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, something better than nothing. That's awesome. That's progress.
Yeah, honestly.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, honestly, that makes me feel a lot better as we went into this interview. I'm like, man, I haven't heard anything about this. And we tried to be really prepared for this meeting. And I'm like, man, that was the number one thing. And I hadn't seen it. So hearing that, and even though it's in beta, at least there's progress being made, which is incredible. But go ahead, Lee. Sorry to cut you off.
It's functional too. Yeah, I was just going to say, it's perfectly functional. The judges that have taken courses on there are able to you can stop and start. Some of the clunkiness from what existed in the past has been solved. You can stop and start things. You can go back to right where you were in a course. You can have access. We can either make access available to everything or limit it to just what's pertinent to those people based upon what their needs are. And so the functionality is much, much better than it used to be. Now, the trick to this whole thing, and we have had help from people over the last couple of years in formatting. Oh, that was odd. Did you hear that?
Sorry,
You're okay.
That was me. I apologize. I'm sending the link to somebody, and I pulled up the video, and it was loud.
No worries. Yeah, no worries at all. So the point being that what we really need to do is to digitize the information and the data that we've gotten and format them appropriately so they're easily digestible packets of information for people. Right? It's all about user experience, and that's been, I would tell you that the challenging thing is when we outsource that, because we do get some funding for that specifically for education, not a lot, and so most of it's come from out of our operational budget. But when we outsource it, those hours are not cheap to get somebody professional to code it. So if there's anybody who listens to this podcast that would be willing to help us at a reasonable rate or a volunteer rate would be even better. Please do not hesitate to contact me. Those hours are well over $100 per hour to get that coding done. And that is not, that's completely outside of any other funding that we get from, whether it be educational resources from USOPC or foundation or whatever. Those things are not supported with a grant.
Yep. So we do have to highlight just a couple other organizations that are doing some coaches education. It's nice to hear that I'll put in quotes like Learning Academy. It sounds like it might be repackaged a little bit differently. But the PDCA doing the symposium every year, Drew Johansson and John Fox, and then in coordination, kind of we've helped organize and market the 2028 and beyond camps. So there does seem to be more privatized options as well, but it sounds like USA Diving is still working towards getting it where you want, but at least there's progress on that front.
Yeah, and we'd like to help support those. Like I said, we Cliff and I and others have been working together now for almost 6 months. Well, that's actually more than 6 months to try to move this forward in a collaborative effort between 3 entities, and that's hit some stumbling blocks. Notably, Paris, obviously, SEP is cold over the summer, and now we're going to pick it back up again here. But we'd like to support and promote and do whatever we can to help people who have the initiative and are able to provide a product in the sense that Drew and John are doing. We never want to steal their thunder. They're doing a great thing. But if we can help to support those things, if anybody else has those ideas in mind, we're absolutely want to promote them. And I think we have promoted actually on our website and on our social media for Drew in particular.
Yep. Yeah. You were extremely helpful in helping promote via social media. And we were super grateful for that. And we saw that help kind of boost the camp up, which was awesome. So you did help promote that. Good. So the last question here was just, it's more of a confirmation, is the status of the Learning Academy would be in this new online platform. It's repackaged into this new platform. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, think of it as Learning Academy 2.0, and
Okay.
I don't know that we'll keep that name, but bigger, better, more robust, more user friendly.
Okay, awesome. So next piece here is one of the real talking points that you wanted to touch base on. And so the quotes that we had from the previous episode were there's two things in the near term: educational collaboration, where we can create basic curriculum that we can put out to make it readily available through a user-friendly medium. Learning Academy is kind of what we put in quotes, which sounds like you're hitting. They already have platforms in place where they can help make these things readily available, ease of access, and they can help create basic curriculum so we can create programs and possibly degrees in the future. So, where is the status of that educational collaboration in terms of you kind of gave us that already in the online platform, but maybe the progress being made towards potential degree programs in the future
with Indian River
Yeah,
specifically.
with Indian River.
sure, understood. So, a couple of things that are worthwhile to flesh out. The first one is their their online offering uses a platform called Blackboard, if I remember correctly. That is the name. That is not, it does not work. It doesn't play nice with our old antiquated SCORM files. It doesn't. So we abandoned that. We went with developing our other, the newer platform that's out there with help from them and an independent contractor who helped us to digitize and put things online. So that was a little disappointing. The people who we originally spoke with that said, "Oh yeah, we can handle whatever you want us to," well, they didn't really thoroughly check it out, if I'm being honest. And quite frankly, those people are no longer at Indian River. But the new regime of IT folks that are there are incredibly helpful. So, just for example, they recently have added us to their email platform. So we're able to transfer over all of our Outlook, and eventually we will be able to put piggyback our system onto theirs and make it much more user friendly than I would say it is today. Not that it's not user friendly. You can go on there; it's very intuitive, it's very easy to use. But when you throw some weight behind it, that Indian River will give to us by adding some of the tools that they have access to that we don't, because they are a .edu. So some of those things are, the Adobe suite of products, and they've got a Bloomberg connection. They've got a few other things that they're helping us out with it to a large degree. Recently, they've moved our office on campus from where it was, and most people won't know what this means, but from the B building over to the V, like Victor building, which is where the sound stage and the studios are, so that we can begin to do some of our own content creation. I intend to, maybe before the first of the year, but certainly after the first of the year, to do at a minimum a monthly podcast of my own, which will help with communication and give people the ability to have a really good insight, so we don't go 3 years again. And guys, by the way, I don't mean that wouldn't be available for you at all. It's just I think that I need to be available to the constituents on a much more frequent basis. And the easiest way to do that is for me to do something from those studios. So,
Yep.
that partnership it's bearing fruit in a lot of different ways. Now, maybe the bigger, larger role of that partnership at this point, before we talk about the facility, which I know we're going to get to, is introductions to the corporate world, introductions to their foundation members, introductions to people who are interested in supporting the Olympic movement in a manner that has escaped us because we don't have the bandwidth or the footprint that they do. So when the president of the college talks with somebody who's running a sizable business in South Florida and we get an endorsement through that introduction, it's a much different conversation. It's a much easier conversation to talk with that person about supporting things, supporting our programs and supporting our athletes. And then the discussion recently has come about more easily anyway about brand managers and things. And I don't want to get too far off your question. So if I'm getting down a rabbit trail here, get me back on track and what you're looking for in terms of what's the answer that you're looking for here.
Well,
Did I
to
answer
me,
your question? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
yeah. And to me, what I hear when you mention all those things is just, dollar support and community support from people who've got some money. And, obviously that's attractive if we can be a self-sustaining entity, USA Diving itself. And if it's supported by outside money, I mean, that's just going to help everybody involved.
So I can't tell you what a great dovetail that is into what I want to talk about, if you don't mind. In our world today, some things have changed dramatically. And when I say that, it's been coming for a long time. So the USOPC has a very different way of looking at things today and tomorrow than they did in years past. And the minute I tell you that, they'll tell you that their focus is still the same, just their execution and level of accountability is different now. And here's what that means. They've told us all along, if you win medals, you'll get funding. If you don't, you won't. But they've never really done that. It's always been a case where, diving's really, loved by the public and sort of a darling child of the USOPC and of the Olympic movement. And we still are to some degree. I'm not saying we're not. But the truth of the matter is there's a different sheriff in town now. His name is Rocky Harris. And he is a big believer in the precepts that are accountability and realistically what they're willing to fund and what they're not willing to fund. And there's a big conversation going on right now. We know we're going to lose some funding. It's already a tangible number, which once the allocation is done, I can share with everybody. I'm hesitant to do it today because I think it will it'll sound like hyperbole until it's published, but I don't want it to sound like hyperbole. It's a real deal. It's a significant number that we are going to lose from our funding from USOPC. The reason that's important, the reason I say that to you, is now more than ever, we have to begin to understand where our next dollars are coming from. We have to understand what revenue sources we can tap into, and we have to understand what the value proposition is that USA Diving can provide to potential donors and sponsors. That's a different perspective than we've had historically. Historically, we were well loved. We got lots of viewership. We still get lots of viewership, by the way. But we were loved because we had won a bunch of medals historically. And now that history is old enough and far enough in our past that it doesn't carry as much weight anymore. And so some of the historical folks that would have written checks stopped writing checks. And that was a while ago, by the way. The USOPC going to cut down our funding by some percentage, which again, once our allocation is published, I'll be happy to share. And there's other people who take a look at it and go, why would we support you? What is it that you're doing that we would want to support? And I think the discussion now centers around, well, we are an Olympic sport that is in a state of transition. And I think there's a lot of things that we need to do. And without funding, we're going to have a really difficult time doing that. Some of those things are very, very obvious, right? We need to support our athletes. That couldn't be more obvious than that. But some of those things are not so obvious. And some of those things are, hey, we need to support because we need additional people on staff to do certain things that are not getting done today. I'll point to one that's absolutely right in my crosshairs, and that's we need someone whose main focus is education. That their job all the time, every day, is developing our educational resources and programs that we make available to our members. And that's not a cheap person, by the way. Mm-hmm. So those are things that, I'm on my soapbox a little bit here because I'm here. I know that there are some concerns about our raising membership fees 3 years ago. I think it was 3 years ago now. I think it was in 21, wasn't it? Yep. We'll get to. I know we'll get there. And there's other things, what's the partnership look like with Indian River? Who are your new sponsors and who are you talking with and what are your focuses? And so if I can kind of dive right into that, I hate to use that pun because everybody in the world does it, but
I'll lead you right into that. What I'm hearing and really what I appreciate, Lee, is I'm going to steal John Fox's line that he uses on me all the time. When there's change, there's an opportunity. And when things happen, mm-hmm. you need to find that opportunity. And what I'm hearing is with the coming lack of funding from the USOPC, the opportunity is, well, let's go find some funding somewhere else. And so from that perspective, I just want to say thank you. And I appreciate you thinking ahead of the game as far as, that conversation. And so then, let's segue to that Indian River partnership. The new facility, it seems really exciting. In a central location for coaching, for learning, for education, just for all of diving. So feel free, take the reins on that one. And what can we be excited for?
Will do. Yeah. So that I could not be more excited about it than I am. I think the idea that we have a relationship with a .edu who is willing to pay for the building of a cutting-edge, state-of-the-art facility is, to my mind, the best possible thing that could have happened. This is a great resource for everybody, and I know there's been questions about the intentions for it. Why would you build another 27-meter platform 100 miles north of one that's already existing, and so on and so on? What I would tell you is the more world-class cutting-edge facilities we have in this country, regardless of 27 meters or not, the better for diving. It gives us the opportunity to do things that right now we don't have a lot of places that we can. Here's what I mean by that. Many of the places that we are historically used to going to and competing at, or even training at, they're corralled, or they're constrained by their necessity, by their relationship with a university in most cases, but also by whether it be a park and rec district or whether it be you name it. We don't have very many facilities where somebody's going to say, hey, listen, we're going to build this thing, and it's not going to cost you anything, and you can have whatever run of the place you want, within reason, of course, but we can run camps. We can have teams come and train there. We can do coach education seminars there. And this place is going to have state-of-the-art audio and visual capturing capabilities, meaning the ability to do things like capture in real time, stop motion, turn something around 180 degrees or 300, I guess it wouldn't actually be 360 degrees, so that you can take a look at a diver in midair, stop them, turn them on their axis, whatever rotation angle you want to. And then really examine things because of the nature of what that content capture capability is, in terms of what do our mechanics look like, what do our takeoffs look like, what are our entries looking like, and collect that because of the ability of the campus, because they have servers and they have much more computing power, and they have a studio that can curate that content for us, and people that do that every single day in that studio. Those are things that we couldn't do otherwise. We could never afford to build this facility, number one. And they're not even asking us for a dime. They're asking us to help promote it, for sure. I've done that a lot. But we won't pay a single penny towards the building of that pool. And I think that it's a brilliant, brilliant thing that's going on. And selfishly, they get a lot out of it too. Because for them, the relationship with an NGB, an Olympic sport, gives them a lot of credibility with their big-time donors. It gives them the ability to do some things and raise some money that they wouldn't be able to do otherwise. So, I mean, it's a good win-win. So it's a good, there's good synergy there. Going back to the facility for just a minute, I also want to add dryland facility like nobody's business. A facility that has all of the Olympic capabilities. So the fact that there's a 27 meter and a 20 meter, by the way, and a 12 meter and so on and so on, is a benefit, but it doesn't impact or hamper our traditional diving in any way.
Yeah, love to hear that. I do have one follow-up.
Yep.
Lee, you still with? Okay, yep. Okay, awesome. So number one, it sounds like somebody is on the back end of this with a pretty deep pocket and a deep checkbook, and we appreciate them taking an interest in diving. That's awesome. One of my biggest questions I have here is, who is going to run this facility, and who is going to be, the coach, the educator? Do we have that person in place?
No, neither. And I think those are two separate people, by the way. So running the facility, we've been given the ability to say if we want to run the facility. And the question is for diving, and that's really a board of directors level question, is do we want to be in the business of running facilities, right? The question is, in my mind, is not so much, do we want to run facilities? The question in my mind is, can we run a business that makes some money that helps to support diving? And so we need to explore that more thoroughly. But to answer your other question, do we have a coach in mind? Do we have a education director in mind? No. The campus, the school, has hired a world-class biomechanist. His name is Kevin Miller. He works with track and field. He's worked with he's worked with pole vaulters a lot recently, but he's also worked with people who, tumbling and trampoline, and people who are in the same ecosphere that we are. And he's very excited about helping us to work on things like training models that allow us to make sure that what we're doing doesn't negatively impact or result in chronic injuries. That's his background. That's where he comes from. He was an orthopedic surgeon. He's developed orthotics. He holds patents on orthotics. And this is a guy who's, first of all, he's brilliant, but second of all, he's right on campus. His office is in the O building. And so if a team were to come, we're 2 years away, two plus years away from the pool being, in the water. But when that's done, or even before, when a team wanted to come and work out in dry land and they get the benefit of his knowledge and his ability to help to educate based upon real, true science, right? Biomechanics that you can put a pencil to and go, oh yeah, hey, that makes a lot of sense. That's a benefit that we should be able to offer to our coaches and our divers and our whoever wants to take advantage of it. To me, those are the kinds of things we can never afford to do. And if we can afford to do them, some of it's funded today by USOPC, and we don't know where that funding is going to end up. So back to what you said a minute ago. Yes, the trustees of the college have invested in this facility, and yes, it is a college facility, but it's a college facility that wants to work with us and wants to be available as a resource to USA Diving and USA Diving's coaches and USA Diving's divers. Now, the positions and how we staff it, that's not done yet. We're not there yet. We got 2 years to figure that
out. So I do have a follow-up just based off what you just said, Lee. So let's hypothetically say there was another college with a good amount of resources as well and said, hey, I also want to be a facility that's willing to work with USA Diving. Is that something they just reach out to you directly?
Please. I would welcome it with open arms. So far, nobody has, but I would welcome it with open arms. Because,
okay, awesome.
Because I'll go back to my presentation ago, which I think I'm right about. I put an awful lot of thought in this. More is better. More facilities, more diving boards, more platforms, more pool time, more, as long as it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. If people are willing to work with us, we're not going to say no. I think we have to be willing to think differently now than we used to think. And I'm not suggesting that no one ever had this idea before. I'm not reinventing the wheel here. This is something that just, from a common sense standpoint, just makes sense, right? It's access. If we're interested in access, and that's truly one of the things that we have to be focused on today, access and developing talent and finding that talent. Well, if we're going to do that, we need more pools and more places that are going to be willing to work with us. It's not just one facility that's going to solve the problem.
Yep. Well, the reason I thought of that was I was like, I mean, it's a selfish thought in my head and it's very unrealistic, but I'm like, well, we have 2 1 meters and 2 3 meters. If we need more locations to train springboard divers, then if my university will say, we'll waive all fees for USA Diving to do a springboard synchro camp or something. But I don't know. That was a thought that popped in my head of like, well, if you're saying relationships with facilities is something that you're looking for, well, the college coaches that are listening, the club coaches that have access to their facilities, that might be a way to create a mutually beneficial partnership.
So I'll just say it, as succinctly as I can. I can't envision a situation in which I would say no to that. Right. Leslie and Channing need partners to help with things like synchro camps. They need people who are invested to the point where if somebody said no pool, believe me, if somebody were to come and say, listen, we'll give you 20 hours a week free pool time, 10 weeks a year, you just got to tell us when you need them in plenty of advance time. I guarantee you we would not say no to that.
Right. Cool. That's exciting, at least.
What I keep coming back to is the people behind it as well. You can build facilities, you can have, a high school facility here, a college facility there, a high dive facility here. But if the people, to me, aren't in place, those facilities won't get used as much. And again, the people part comes all the way full circle back to coaches' education. We have a lot of incredibly talented coaches and they have their positions, they have their jobs, they're where they're at. So we just need more highly educated coaches so that we can operate these wonderful facilities. And, if there was a high school coach in, Wisconsin that was super gung-ho and excited about diving, and now all of a sudden that person has a family, they have to step away from diving, what happens to the facility if that key person is now gone? And I mean, I think every business in the country is struggling with finding the right people, right? That's always going to be a struggle, but that's where I keep coming back to that coach's education piece being so prominent and important is we can have these beautiful facilities, but we need the people, the key employees there running it, making sure it all goes smoothly.
I agree completely. And it's even more important in today's world probably than it's been historically because of the tumultuous and unknown situation with the NCAA. And NCAA it provides a career path for a lot of coaches. It provides a path to an education for a lot of divers, and it creates so many opportunities for us, not just USA Diving, but coaches and athletes. And if that changes dramatically, that makes it even tougher. This is lots of moving parts here.
One more piece before we move on from Indian River. How did the unveiling go? And that whole weekend, we were approached by Jerry Dunn, and he said, man, you guys got to come down to Fort Pierce. And we didn't really know what was happening. And then all of a sudden we see this, architectural rendering online of, hey, this new facility is coming. And for us, it kind of came like, whoa, holy cow, this is already all of a sudden something that's happening. Talk to us about kind of where that whole process was.
Yeah, so good question. The original intent was not nearly to be the media event that we ended up wanting it to be. The original intent was to make an announcement to celebrate the partnership and to give some kudos to some people who, quite honestly, are writing big checks. Then at the end of the day, when I say the end of the day, I'm talking about when we got done with Paris, Dr. Moore, president of the college, and I started talking, and we brought Dave Gascon, chairman of the board of USA Diving, in and had a discussion. And we thought, we're probably missing the boat here a little bit, and we probably were a little short-sighted. We probably should have started talking about this a long time ago, since we knew we'd be breaking ground later this year. We probably should have made this a full-blown media event. And we all kind of looked at each other and went, yep, you're right. We should have done that. And so shame on the brain trust, so to speak, and I'll take that one on myself, because the truth of the matter is we were so focused on the facility and on the great things that could come out of it that we missed the messaging and the communication part of it. So at the end of the day, it was a nice event. We had good media coverage in Florida. I think we got some decent social media. I think we got some people who did not realize what we were doing to understand that we are moving forward with this. We've spoken about it for a long time. This is not the first time the world's heard of this, by the way. We made an announcement back in 2021, and during that announcement of the partnership between Indian River and USA Dive, we talked at that time about a facility, but it's a real deal now. There's demolition going on. There's ground being, there's track hose and there's things that are on campus right now that are digging up ground where the buildings are going to go, and then the hole in the ground is going to be dug relatively soon. I mean, this is a real thing. It's going to happen. So our poor messaging speaks to an enthusiasm for the facility rather than speaks to what we probably should have done. Is we probably should have trumpeted it real loud, got on top of whatever we could find, and yelled as loud as we could, and we didn't do a great job with that.
All right, Lee, moving forward, we're going to touch on this. This should be a relatively quicker one, is the mentorship program. So the previous episode, you had mentioned wanting to re-energize and put a little bit of funding into that legacy type mentor program that what you said was around 30 years, but not well acknowledged or taken place. Where's the status of that?
So coach mentoring has been going on a long time. So coaches like Drew, so for example, Vince Benzano has been our coach mentor for, I can't even tell you how long. And coaches like Drew Johansson and Wenbo or Randy or whoever have been able to take advantage of it and use that mentoring program. I know I saw in your question about people who have communicated with us about it and not received any follow-up or any response. You know what? I asked the question. I'm not aware of anybody who has asked about coach mentoring and hasn't at least gotten a response. And if you guys are, I would just ask them please to contact me directly, even if they want to bend my ear about it. If that is actually taking place, then shame on us. We need to fix that situation. But
I don't mean to cut you off, but I reached out to you and I've yet to hear back from you or Leslie about it. That was about a month ago, August 25th.
Fair enough. Okay. Good point. I got to be honest with you and tell you that I apologize then, because that's not something that I would have told you that we were guilty of. And if it is, I'll go back to Leslie. We'll have that conversation. We'll come back to you on it.
Well, I think, yeah, no, I think it's just important. You know, you really helped me understand a lot, and you and I, but behind closed doors via email, have kind of talked about some issues that Aaron and I had been experiencing. But yeah, that's something that I just said, hey, I understand it's probably an application style process, and maybe I do not meet the qualifications for that, but I wanted to make sure. I'm like, well, I know of at least one coach that has, so I wanted to make sure I at least pointed that out.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not. I'm disappointed, and I'm also surprised. So thanks for that. It's important that, you know, again, if you bring it up and it's something that's broken, that's how we can fix it. And
Right.
So kudos, hats off to you guys for bringing it up, because if it's broken, we need to fix it.
So and then someone had brought up the subject matter of what happened to the coach/diver mentor mentee program that was developed and offered for a period of time, and is it possible to get that back online? And if so, like, what does that look like moving forward?
Yeah, so I looked into this a little bit. When was it offered?
Ooh, that'd be a good question. I know that USA Diving did some type of mentor program amongst the coaches. I believe Susan Bromberg kind of took the lead on that. I just remember being in her group, and that was organized through USA Diving. And that was, I want to say it was either right before or right after COVID, because I lived at my house in Clarion at the time. So it's been within the last 4 years.
Okay, so I can answer the second part of your question more easily than the first.
Okay.
The second part of the question is, if there is a good reason to do it, and it sounds like there may be. All I would like to see is what it consisted of. Was there a real plan? Is there a real program? Is there some written material that I can read? Is there something that I can suggest that, hey, Leslie and Channing, can you guys take a look at this and embed it for what you think is productivity? And if it's not productive, can we make some, can we jump in this and get some subject matter experts, Susan being one of them, obviously, to work together on creating a true program? Because I couldn't find any formal program. I'm being honest. I looked. If there was one, fantastic. But if it was not organized by us, I would just say, yeah, we'll help, and we'll definitely lean into that. I would love to be able to provide something like that. I'm not aware that we did it.
Okay, awesome.
Lee, another point on the previous episode, you mentioned developing our own assets. And my question here is, have we made progress in this area? We've already talked about strategic partners and looking to add things to the future, but you also said we need to be our own best marketers. Do you feel like we've been doing a better job of that? The same, who are we marketing to?
Yep.
What's that all about?
Great questions. And yes, I think we're doing 100% better job of that. We didn't know what we had to offer to potential sponsors or donors as recently as 4 years ago. Could not have given you a tangible answer to what is the value of our streaming of an event. Couldn't have done it. Had no clue. I would have said, yeah, no idea. And today, through some real efforts in streaming and learning more about what that looks like for the rest of the sporting world, including the Olympic movement, we've got tangible assets that we've developed about what we can promote, what we can sell, and what it's worth. And are we great marketers? No, we are not, because that is definitely not our strength, and we need to get better at it. But are we leaps and bounds beyond where we were the last time the three of us talked? Absolutely 100%.
Cool.
Our assets are very clearly defined now, or at least the big ones, the ones that we know. If I'm sitting down with somebody across the table, we recently signed APG&E as a sponsor this summer, right? When I sat down with them, they're a clean energy company, just for the sake of argument. If you guys know anything about them, or maybe you do, maybe you don't. But the reason we were able to work with them is because there's some synergy between their desire to do good in the world in terms of clean energy and our desire to do good in the world in terms of developing young people, not just divers, but young people. And that really resonated with them, because we understood and we had conversations surrounding what those assets look like. They wrote us a check, and they will continue to write us checks, and they'll be a partner, unless I'm really wrong about this, they'll be a partner all the way through to LA and probably beyond, and that'll be significant dollars. So So we are going outside of our wheelhouse. We're not just talking with the tiers and the speedos and the, arenas of the world. And I think historically, we had some great sponsors at times. Many, many years ago, we had Phillips 66, right? We had AT&T for a time. We had, you name it. Well, we don't have those people anymore. And the reason we don't have them anymore in large measure is because we didn't do a good job of maintaining and developing relationships. And we didn't know what our value proposition was. And I think today, we at the very least understand our value proposition, and we are beginning to do a better job of going back and building and or repairing relationships that probably went away because we didn't do a good job of it. Colorado Time is one.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I can give you, yeah.
Well, I was just going to segue to the next one here. High dive. It's been, ever growing, and, can you update us on high dive and how it fits into USA Diving's future?
I'm so glad you asked that question. Okay, so first and foremost, sorry about that. I am in an airport, as I mentioned.
That's okay.
The announcements come
there you
across
go.
sporadically.
It's clear now.
So good. So diving of all kinds should fall under USA Diving. And when I say that, one should not detract from the other. However, there is clearly a division of diving that is masters. There is clearly a division of diving that is juniors. There is clearly a division of diving that is elite. And all of those can help to support our support and help to support each other, because there's some things that come from one that add to the others, and there's some things that come from the whole that make us stronger. So the minute I tell you that, high diving fits into a very particular niche. There's not a lot of high divers in our country. There's not a lot of high divers in the world, if I'm being perfectly honest. But the amount of pull that high diving has because of its viewership numbers translates to a number of things. First of all, when people see high diving, it's diving. And as long as the messaging is correct, they'll think about diving of all kinds, regardless whether it's 1 meter, 3 meter, 10 meter, 27 meters. It's all diving. And we're all part of one big family. Here's part two, and this is where it comes from some pretty detailed research that we've done about where are our next revenue sources coming from? Where's our next dollars coming from? Those numbers, those viewership numbers that high diving gets will translate to dollars in advertising sales and subscription sales that we could not otherwise get. And that will support the whole realm of diving. I know people are challenged by that thought, but in a sport, in an NGD, where in a non-Olympic year, our budget is less than $4 million. If we can go and find $200,000 from some other source that isn't the USOPC and isn't already endemic to who we are, that's a huge win. I don't care where it comes from, that's a huge win. And we can do that with high diving. And probably significantly more than that. And it's a case that has to be proven. I realize that some people will challenge that. I'm here to tell you, there's a reason why Red Bull takes a loss on their cliff diving series every year. There's a reason they do it.
Well, yeah,
it's not.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Let's just say it's not because they're stupid. It's because they understand that the viewership they get is going to sell more Red Bull. And if they get 10 million viewers on a Saturday afternoon watching cliff diving in XYZ spot, Boston, for example, this last year, man, they're going to do it. And I would do it every single time if I were them too. Sorry, you were going to ask me a question, I think.
Yeah. Well, I was just a comment of anytime there's a new revenue source that's never been there before, obviously you're adding to your future bottom line. So I think, that from that perspective, that's very wise. I would just hope that, like you said, if Red Bull Cliff Diving's taking a loss, I would hope it's a true revenue add position. The other thing you mentioned, there's not a ton of high diving participation in the world. There's just not a lot of high divers just by nature. So we've heard a rumor that, from the consideration of the Olympics, it's kind of being removed from participation just due to lack of numbers globally. Is that a true rumor that we were hearing?
No, from my perspective, it's not true. And here's why. So 5 sports were chosen for LA for 28. And those 5, flag football, cricket, Softball was added back to the docket. There's 2 others, but the point is that there's 5 that were added. High diving was not. Now, I talked with folks from Brisbane, and they are the local organizing committee for Brisbane is absolutely all over high diving, and they want it to become, at the very minimum, an exhibition sport in 32, and maybe even a medal sport. And there's only 2 entities that have the ability to choose, by the way, which sports get added or which sports get taken away. And those are the IOC and the local organizing committee. So unfortunately, we didn't get a ton of support from LA 28. Lots of reasons for that. I don't want to talk to their rationale for it. They had their business model set and they had their own ideas in place. I do think there's an opportunity there for Brisbane. It's probably not a possibility for 28 still. In fact, I'm going to tell you it's almost certainly not a possibility for 28. But I believe that given the worldwide support and viewership of this event, so let's go back to what rationale makes sense. So how many countries participate in high diving? When we hosted the World Cup in Fort Lauderdale a year and a half ago, I guess it's a little less than that now, we had 22 countries, I think it was. Not a tremendous number, but we also had nearly 60 divers in the event. So at the World Cup that will take place here in a few weeks in Brasilia, I'll report back afterwards and let you know how many divers, how many countries, because that number is growing. Now, does it mean that it's large enough and widespread enough that the Olympic Committee would just go, oh, yeah, absolutely no brainer, we got to put it in? No, probably not. But we had to lobby them to put synchro in as well, right? And quite honestly, anything that we can do to add to our numbers that doesn't take away from. So considerations are these: how many countries, how many athletes are you adding? Is it gender neutral? Because they're absolutely committed to that idea that you cannot add one and not the other. You have to have gender neutral sports. And what do the resources look like? Do you have to build new facilities? What's the expense to an LOC? How much money is it going to cost? Those are really the big deals. And so for high diving in particular, you're not building a $20 million facility. You're not building a $5 million or $7 million investment like they do for these, where you're going to build 2 pools inside of an arena. Instead, you're going to spend about $150,000 to construct something at an existing body of water. In most instances, that's what's being done. If you take a look at the last couple of World Championships, if you take a look at the World Cup events, one that's going to take place down in Brasilia here in a couple of weeks again, they're building a structure that doesn't cost an arm and a leg. In the grand scheme of things, it's easy to erect, it's easy to take down, it's easy to implement. So, is there a pull for, is there a tide to swim against to get high diving into the Olympics? Yep, there sure is. There's no doubt about it. But I think there's a tide to swim against for almost any sport, unless it's flag football, and that's because, of course, the NFL supports that. So if the NFL wants it, it's going to get in there.
Yeah. All right, Lee. So we're going to hit one of the primary questions you really wanted us to ask was talk to us about the state of the NGB. And then the follow-up question to that is name 3 to 5 concrete ideas about what can add value to our sport and how the NGB can go about executing those ideas moving forward.
So state of our sport. Okay. State of our sport is strong. Our membership numbers are strong. Financially, we've been in the black now for the last 3 years, and we're doing things that support a solid business model, but we're no longer on the radar. So there was a time not that long ago where we were on the radar for people for serious problems, and there was even the word decertification thrown around at one point way back when. That's not our world anymore. That's not where we're at. We are on stable ground financially, and we're stable ground from a governance perspective. We're going to go through an audit again this upcoming year. I expect it to be much less painful than the one that took place last time, which was during the Olympic year 21, by the way. So from that standpoint, I believe we're in a good place. Now, we got some chinks in our armor. There's no doubt about that. Some of the things that we really need to do is we really need to be better communicators. We really need to be on point as far as our messaging goes. We need to be better at social media. We need to be better at talking to ourselves and the outside world, letting everybody know what's going on in dive. Because here's the thing that happens, and it happens to a lot of Olympic sports. In an Olympic year where you get a lot of attention, everybody wants to know what you're doing and who you are and what's going on. And then in the year after the Olympics, you drop off the face of the earth and nobody really thinks about you anymore. We got to stop that. That's got to go away, and we have to become an compelling entity that people want to find all the time. How do we become that compelling entity? Well, we got to grow up in terms of our communications and our presence out there. Public-facing presence is one of the key main things that we have to do, is develop our brand. We have to be able to be in people's faces. I hate to say it that way, but that's the truth. So that's number one. Number two, we got to be better marketers, and that's different than what I just said. Marketing means it's a 360-degree kind of an idea, which is, hey, we need to be able to find more people who want to dive and give them access to diving. I can't quantify that perfectly for you today, but I can tell you that it's absolutely got to be an initiative that we have to undertake. And then number three is probably, and this might be even the most important of all. And sorry, I should clarify, all of these initiatives are viewed through the lens of diversity, right? So no longer is diversity a box that we check in the world of Olympic sports. Diversity is the lens through which you view, I'm going to say it, all things in your sport. And that's something that we have to get comfortable with. So that said, the last item, the third one, is we've got to find ways and means for new sources of revenue that are sustainable, that are scalable, and that will help us to develop our programs.
Yeah, I think you talked about that on the last episode as well, in terms of expanding the footprint into communities that maybe have not had diving. Has there been any progress on that front over the last 3 years? We know about the Dive into Diversity with Diane Mays, but like, what other things maybe have taken place over the last 3 years to try to expand that footprint?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say we've been marginal at best in that effort. The one thing that I was really hopeful that we were going to be able to do, and it proved that too large of a task for us to do in 24, was that event that we were going to do in Long Beach. It was a high dive event out in the Rainbow Harbor there, right near the Lion Lighthouse. It would have been a brilliant thing for a community that is, has a lot of marginalized folks, a lot of underserved people, and to get them access to and to see diving, not necessarily to go up on a 27-meter platform and jump off or dive off, but to see and understand and maybe generate some interest in, oh, hey, by the way, there's pools here locally that probably would play ball with us if we had interest and we can provide access for them. That's a big one for us. That to me represents a huge opportunity. And again, it doesn't have to be high diving. It just has to be diving. We need to get it in front of people, and then we have to find a way to involve people. And Diane Mays has done a brilliant job, by the way. Her Dive into Diversity I would tell you, it is it's an initial step for something that can hopefully drag us all into the future. And my hat is off to her for it. But no, we've not done a great job of that.
Okay.
You mentioned one of the big focal points is athlete spotlight. So what are we doing from a planning perspective to build these athlete highlights and show some of our successful athletes as great role models in the community? From my perspective, obviously I'm in the know of the sport. We were at trials. I saw a couple of videos of Jessica Parado, a lot of hype around obviously Andrew Capobianco and Tyler Downs. But what are we doing to help grow the superstars of our sport to gain more eyeballs on our sport?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. So we, over the course of the summer, helped Cassidy to do Cassidy Cook. Okay. I've just been told I'm going to have to leave my spot here shortly. But so through our partnership with RTH, AAG Live, we helped Cassidy to grow her following after she and Sarah won their silver medal by threefold, and have done some personal appearances for her, set her up with a personal appearance in Dallas at the recent announcement of the Victory Sports Network and different things like that. So we are able to provide better support than we've been able to in the past. And I know he's going to tell me I've got to go. Sorry? Oh, yes, of course. Thank you. Yeah, of course. So we're getting better at it. I think what we have not done, and we probably need to do, is we need to go back and revisit. It's not just a matter of what are we comfortable with in today's world. I think if we don't do this on a better and larger scale over the course of the next 3 or 4 years, we're going to miss a once in a generation opportunity with Los Angeles coming up. But my point is, we have been able to help some where people are where they're comfortable with it, where they want to do it. One thing that we need to be able to do is to help educate and indoctrinate. I hate that word, but I'm going to use it. People into understanding that if you're going to build your brand, if you're going to do something to get yourself out there, and that's so necessary in today's world, because that's where a lot of the dollars are coming from, and that's where people are going to be able to really experience some serious growth. Then it starts with doing some serious education. I know the USOPC has been pretty good about that. They've taken a lot of our athletes to New York, which they did. Sorry, I don't remember when it was. And they did a really good media day for them. And there was a whole initiative surrounding Making Team USA where they did a very good job of those things. But it's got to be incumbent upon us to help our athletes to develop. And that means educational, doing some camps that, are not just a diving camp or not just a training camp, but also have some information and some education for, our young people about how they promote themselves, how they build a brand, how they develop relationships and potentially get sponsors, things like that. So it's on our radar. We've done if I'm gonna grade us, I'd say we're probably a C+ student in that right now. We need to become better.
Okay. Lee, I know you have to go. Would you have time for one last question before we wrap up?
Of course. Yes, please. Go ahead.
All right. So a perfect ending question for us is, on the last podcast, one of the last things you said the board said to you when you took over, you have to understand where we are at right now. There's a fire burning, but after that fire is out, we also need to engender some trust, rebuild our culture and credibility, because there's a lot of people who don't believe in us or trust us anymore because they've heard a lot of empty promises and they've heard over and over again, and then they get their hopes up and they get smashed. So it's two-part question. One, is the fire out? And two, if so, what has USA Diving done over the last 3 years to rebuild culture, trust, and credibility with its members?
So the fire, I would say, is out. I would like to think that through conversations and through open, candid discussions like this one, we've built some credibility back, and some of our follow-up issues I think we've been better at. You told me about one earlier about the mentoring program, which we were not good at, but I think we're better.
Yeah, I agree.
Do I think we're good? No, I don't think we're good at it yet. And I think that there's still mistrust out there, and probably rightfully so. And I also think that I'm going to put a little bit of this back into our membership. I'm not going to put blame. I'm going to ask for some help with this. I'm going to ask for help. Okay, I think this is important for me to say this. If you feel like there's mistrust, if you feel like there's things that you're not getting from us, if you feel like something's broken, please bring it to those people who can do something about it. I see things, I see postings sometimes, whether it be Facebook or whether it be, somewhere else. And I understand and I appreciate the frustration in certain situations. But that's not going to solve it. Not going to fix it. You got to bring it to somebody who has the ability and the power and the willingness to do something about it. And I realize that that's uncomfortable at times, but I'm just going to ask for your help, because it's not going to get better unless we work on it all together. Is that fair? Do you think that's unreasonable?
I think that's extremely fair. I think of the other issue that I brought to your attention early last week, and you helped me resolve the issue within 72 hours, maybe 86 hours. Like it was really nice to get that issue resolved. And so I can speak from experience that typically when I bring you an issue and either one, ask you for help, whether it was promoting the camps with Drew and John, or two, resolving an issue for future events, you were able to help resolve those issues pretty quickly, whether it was with a phone call or an email. So I do think that's fair. I think it's fair, if you have an issue, take it to someone who can help you. And we know you're on the go, so we just wanted to, we felt that was a perfect question to kind of end on. And for our listeners and the viewers at home, we had a lot of other questions. We will send those all to Lee, and we will work to get an article or a Q&A out to the community once he is back, once you have some time to take advantage of that.
Thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate the ability to have this conversation. And I will just say, not everything is solvable with a phone call, but we'll do the best that we can. And I'm always available. I don't mind. For those of you who have it, and if you don't, you can find it on the website. You're welcome to call me on my cell.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Lee. We hope you have a good day.
Guys, take care.
Thank you, Lee.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you're out there listening, again, hit us up on Instagram. We are at the Diving Pod. Our email is thedivingpod@gmail.com. If you'd like us to forward an email to Lee, we'd prefer if you just reach right out to Lee. He just gave you the open invitation there, so that'd be great. One more shout out for Cowing Robards. That's my family's business. You can see the logo on the banner there. We do screen printing and embroidery. So if you need an online store set up, just let me know and we'll make that happen. But until then, we'll see you next time.